What's up, everyone? In this video, we have a lot to talk about. So the stock market today fell off in a pretty decent way, and we are now back below a crucial level, and this is not good for the market. In this video, we're going to talk about all the important things you need to know about the stock market right now, and towards the end of today's video, we have a $1.25 million trade that's very interesting, and I actually really like this setup, so make sure to stick with us towards the end of today's video. But Tom, let's get right into it.
Yeah, Mike, the S&P 500, or more specifically, the SPY, was not how we expected it to go today. We saw a pretty big pullback back to the downside, but I will say there were a few sectors and stocks that did end up going up, like the airlines, like you can see here with UAL, DAL, Boeing, and we even saw some of the marijuana stocks have some nice movement early on. But the SPY was down overall, and this was a pretty big pullback. I would consider this pretty significant. You know, we fell from 406 all the way back to under 400 today, and right around market close, we are kind of consolidating there right at 400 after passing below. So I'm curious to see, Mike, heading into tomorrow, if we're going to end up breaking back above 400 and maybe going back to the upside a little bit, or if we're going to reject off this and fall back down. And I will say, if I look at the SPY on the 15-minute chart over the past, I would say 30 days or so, ever since the low here on October 13th, it looks like, this is actually a pretty crazy stat. From the low to the high here on the SPY, look just to the right of my cursor, this was like a 17.7% increase from low to high, and we haven't really had too many pullbacks mixed in here. So I could maybe expect a bit of a pullback coming on the SPY. And even looking on the daily, Mike, it looks like we are still just a little bit overextended, at least when you look at it this month. You know, it obviously over the past year, we're still down, but this month we've been on quite the uptrend.
Exactly, and that's just kind of how the market works sometimes. Just like you said, it's like when you have a 17.7% pop, call it an 18% pop in such a short period of time, sometimes it's just inevitable to have some sort of pullback. So while the market is pulling back now, it's not necessarily a bad thing, because if you have a market or a stock or any sort of asset that rises just way too much too quickly, that could actually be a bad thing. So it's not bad to see a little pullback sprinkled in here and there. And then Tom, like looking at the heat map today, it's not like we just had like one or two industries drive down the market. Like for the most part, like every single industry was in the red today.
Yeah, exactly. Like usually we're always talking about tech, but it wasn't just that this time. We saw tons of stocks down. Even the financial stocks were down in the red. Retailers were down. Amazon was down. Tesla was down 6.6%. I mean, talk about a down day for them. So many growth stocks were down, like Asana was down over 11%. And look at those credit card stocks in the red. Even the oil stocks, Mike, were deep down. I mean, I know sometimes lately when the market's been down, sometimes oil ends up popping up a little bit, but not today. Like we said, the only real things that were green were airlines. And you can see here, even on the chart, it doesn't really make much of a difference at all anyways, considering, you know, how small they are compared to some of these bigger companies.
True. Very interesting. So you mentioned Tesla there. It's one of the worst performing stocks in the S&P 500 today. What's going on with this one?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. There's some pretty bad news here coming out of Tesla, but I will say it's not really totally exactly the way that it is reported here. So it says that their plan to cut output of their Model Y by more than 20% at their Shanghai factory this month. But whenever you look into this a little bit further, a Tesla representative actually ended up responding and replied false news without elaborating on it at all. So this is very strange, but nonetheless, Tesla's stock took a big hit today, Mike, and this was pretty big. We've been honestly bouncing right off of that 200 resistance lately, and I know the last time we hit that level, we fell all the way back down to 167.50, and lately we got pretty close, and we're all the way back down today to like 180. So definitely watch Tesla. It's not good to hear that they might be cutting some of their production here. And, you know, the Model Y is a pretty big SUV, Mike. I know it's been pretty popular, and to cut that by 20% from the previous month is pretty bad. But I will say the representative called it false news, so take this with a grain of salt. It's kind of hard to understand, but nonetheless, Tesla stock was down in pre-market, and it kept selling off as the day went on.
No doubt. So there's been a lot of tensions and problems in China over the past couple weeks and especially over the past year. And what's interesting is that we saw a lot of China stocks move up in a good way over the past couple weeks, while at the same time we are starting to see some of the US companies with China exposure start to take little hits here and there, like we see with Tesla now, and even what we might see with other companies going forward like Apple and Nike. Tom, more specifically with Apple, I know there is some interesting things going on behind the scenes. Tell us more.
Yeah, there definitely is. It looks like Apple is actually shifting a lot of their production from China to other countries here. And, I've seen a lot of stuff talking about shifting a lot of that production to India, Vietnam, and a lot of other countries. You guys can check out more of the specifics on it. You can see, obviously, though, India and Vietnam are some of the bigger ones, but they're pretty much just talking about other countries in Asia other than China. Now, as we know, China has had a very strict zero COVID policy lately, and they know that the lockdowns have caused delays and a whole bunch of stuff. I even saw that there was a lot of protests at some of these Apple factories over the past couple of weeks too, which caused a big delay on iPhones, even worse. So yeah, there's been a lot of stuff going on with Apple and China, but some of these numbers with China is pretty crazy, Mike. So it says that China has 70% of the global smartphone production. That is pretty insane, and a staggering 98% of iPhones are made in China. That is a huge number. I knew it was high, but I was not expecting to hear 98%, and they hold 50% of global smartphone shipments. So that's insane, Mike. That's a lot of movement there. That's some pretty crazy stuff. 98% of iPhones are made in China. So hopefully they can get these things figured out. And honestly, Mike, when they do get it figured out, I think that might help Apple a little bit. But in the shorter term, obviously, this is going to create a lot of confusion as they try to, figure out how to curtail some of these delays.
Exactly. And I feel like that's a very big risk for Apple. Like, Apple's taking a pretty big bet that the relations between US and China will stay not necessarily strong, but at least just okay, given how much exposure they have to China. Like, all it takes is, one invasion of Taiwan, you can say, and that can really hurt Apple's business. So we will see, but I think it will be a very smart move to see Apple diversify a little bit, especially in terms of, just their manufacturing hubs and all that good stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, 98% of iPhones are made in China. So keep that in mind that as they go forward, they're estimating that 10% of iPhones are manufactured in India, and he expects the increase to happen at kind of like a slow pace there. So hopefully they can end up getting, like they said, like in 5 years, 35% will be manufactured in India. So very interesting there. But, I can't wait to see how the smartphone industry goes. And, I've even seen stuff, Mike, lately with Tesla potentially talking about getting into the iPhone or phone market here. So maybe that'll even end up making Apple go even crazier. But I know that only really has been some rumors and mainly threats by Elon if, Apple removes Twitter from their platform and stuff like that. I'm not sure that's necessarily true that they're going to come out with the phones, but like I said, they have kind of rumored it.
Yep, we will see. All right, Tom, now let's talk about some good stocks for the rest of the week. TLRY is still a stock I'm watching very, very closely. Today, this morning, I should say, it was up like 11 or 12%, and it was just booming to the upside. For those of you who don't know, TLRY is a marijuana stock. Most of the time, marijuana stocks do nothing, but every now and then they move quicker and more volatile than you could possibly imagine. There's been a couple like sprinkles of marijuana news lately, but nothing too crazy just yet. Either way, these stocks are just extremely volatile, and lately they've had some pretty good momentum. So TLRY is definitely on my radar for the rest of the week to the upside.
Yeah, we've just been seeing more and more news coming out about cannabis in a good way. And today, Biden signed a marijuana research bill. So hopefully that ends up helping Congress, maybe push along cannabis and maybe finally get it rescheduled. I know it's scheduled with some of those harder drugs. So good to see Tilray up today, Mike. That was a very explosive move, all the way up above $5 per share. I will say though, it looks like we hit right off of this resistance from the past, right around like I would say like right around like 515, maybe 510. So definitely watch Tilray. I know it had a pretty explosive move the past 4 or 5 trading days, so it might slow down for a couple days, but I do feel like Mike, it can still maybe continue. And there was a pretty big intraday support here, right around $4.50, which I definitely like for the next few days. But yeah, it's one of those sectors that has been nuts. And talk about crazy stocks, Mike. I'm actually looking at AMD here for today. They had a pretty bad move to the downside, and if this market continues to pull back and we keep seeing stocks fall, AMD should be a pretty good intraday play tomorrow. Now, as you can see, there's a bit of support here, right around 72.80. So if I see a move below that, I'll watch for a drop down towards 72. And if the market really starts accelerating to the downside, I'll watch for a push possibly all the way down to 70 if that's a pretty big sell-off tomorrow. But, keep in mind, if we get to 70, the overall market will have to take quite the drop. But I am kind of watching that SPY, Mike. I will say that was not the best movement today.
True that. Another stock I am watching is ExxonMobil. So we all know ExxonMobil. This stock took a beating today. Energy stocks have been looking relatively weak over the past couple of weeks. Over the past year, energy stocks have been outperforming many other industries, but over the past couple weeks, they've definitely been weak. And we've also seen a lot of bearish, unusual options activity with oil stocks and energy stocks over the past week or so. So I can definitely see ExxonMobil tanking down a little bit. It's definitely like one of the first stocks I will look to in the event the market starts to turn to the downside.
Yeah, definitely. And that was actually a pretty big break today, right below 107.50 or like right around 108 on Exxon. I know I've been watching that support for a while. You can see I have it marked in purple. And yeah, we had a very nice drop down below that. So very happy with that. Hopefully we continue down towards maybe like $100 even here over the next few days. That might even make for some pretty good day trades. So keep it on the radar. But another stock, Mike, that I'm going to be watching for tomorrow is going to be UVXY. Now, I know we don't usually watch this, but UVXY has been falling down in a huge way lately. Now, I know people love to play this when the market falls, but as I talked about at the beginning of the video, the market here, the SPY is very overextended, pretty much 17, 18% from the low to the high. If we start to see the market drop back down a little bit, UVXY might start to move up at least a little bit here in the shorter term. It's going right now for around $7.32 in after hours. And you can see before the SPY started flying up here, it was all the way up around $13, which is, 80, 90% there. So I'm going to be watching this for potential move up. I do feel like we could maybe retest $8 or maybe even $8.50 here over the next couple weeks if that SPY starts to pull back for us.
All right, there we go. Well, Tom, you know what time it is. Time for the momentum plays for tomorrow. With the first one, we have DraftKings to the downside.
DKNG. I feel really bad for this one, Mike. They're one of my favorites. I do not want to play them to the downside tomorrow, but definitely watch for them to break down below 14.75. That's going to be a pretty big intraday support there. And if we break that, watch for a possible move down towards 14.40 and who knows, maybe even 14 if the market's bad enough.
All right, with the next one, we have UPS, also to the downside.
United Parcel Service. I like this. It's one of those shippers, but unfortunately, again, back to the downside. Go ahead and make them break below 180. That's a nice even level for us.
And with the last one, we have good old AMD, also to the downside.
Yeah, this is like that trade I talked about earlier right there. Go ahead and make us break down below 72.50. I think that would be a very safe level. You could even try to play 72.80 here, but I think 72.50 would be very safe.
Sounds good. So we're watching AMD, UPS, and DraftKings for potential day trades to the downside tomorrow, only if they break below the levels Tom listed. And it is now time for the $1.25 million trade from today. Today, I was looking through some order flow and I saw a giant bearish trade on DHI. For those of you who don't know, DHI is like one of the largest home builders in America, And I'm looking at the stock, and it's just been doing okay over the past couple of weeks and months. Nothing horrendous, but at the same time, nothing great. But as I looked further into this trade, obviously the economy isn't necessarily the strongest right now. And at the same time, mortgage rates have been just absolutely exploding over the past year to year and a half. As mortgage rates rise up, that definitely hurts the housing market, in the same way as if mortgage rates were to fall a lot, it would help the housing market. So the thing is, with DHI, I saw $1.25 million flow into a put debit spread. So this is going to get a little bit advanced, but I'm going to break it down simply. So for my advanced people out there, we saw the hedge fund, or the smart money in this case, buy the 75 strike DHI put options that expire on February 17th of 2023, and at the same time they shorted the DHI 60 strike put options that expire on February 17th of 2023, and they did all of this, and they paid $1.25 million to get into this trade. It is a put debit spread. In a simple version, basically we have some smart money figure, whether it be a hedge fund, institution, insider, whatever, betting that DHI stock will fall. This trade will be the most profitable if DHI is at or below $60 by February 17th of 2023. So it's a pretty bearish play. It's a pretty bold bet as well. I think it's actually a pretty good trade.
Yeah, it looks pretty good, Mike. I mean, it's a pretty tough one to me. I mean, that is a big drop down to 60, I will say. But, if these rates and stuff do start to come down, obviously a little bit more, and, maybe that housing market starts to, get thrown into a bit more of a funk, then I think that we will definitely see DHI fall off. And, looking at it right now, it's definitely a little bit overextended. And even when you look at it on a very long-term chart, it looks very overextended to the upside still, like we could still see a potential drop back down. So definitely watch it. That's a lot of money put in, Mike. Like you said, it is a bit more of an advanced play, but I felt like the way you explained it was pretty easy. It's pretty simple. They're just buying the 75 puts and shorting those 60 puts for February 17th of 2023. Obviously, if you do that at the same time, it will, turn that play into a spread. So looks pretty good, Mike. Like I said, though, that does seem pretty far down to 60 down there, doesn't it?
It does, but also keep in mind, it doesn't have to hit 60 in order for this play to be profitable. This stock can get to 70, and the smart money in this situation will also bank off of it. So 60 is the max profit point. Even if this stock only falls back down to 72 or 73, I'd have to check the exact trade, they'll still make good money. So keep that in mind as well. I think it's unlikely, for this stock to be at $60 for a max profit, but of course with put debit spreads, you don't always have to hit a home run.
Okay, cool. There you go. I kind of got confused there for a second, Mike. You kind of made it seem like it was going below 60, but that does make a lot more sense now. It does make sense if you get down to maybe 76, 72 or something like that. You probably see some good profits. And, I know a lot of our traders out there are probably not going to be getting into a spread either way. They'll probably look to get to some puts. And honestly, Mike, if I'm looking at these puts here, they're longing the 75 puts. So, maybe that'll be a pretty good strike to look at for some of our viewers out there who, want to get a little bit more risky.
Exactly. There's many ways to capitalize off of a trade like this. You can, of course, follow the spread that we outlined. You can short the stock by itself. You can do, you could buy puts on the stock. You can sell calls. You could sell call credit spreads on it. You can do a ratio trade or a pairs trade where you might short DHI, but at the same time buy SPY. And then you're just making a bet that DHI will underperform SPY. There are many ways to do it, but the main takeaway you need to know is that we have big money betting against DHI, and it kind of makes sense given the economy and just situation we're in with the real estate market.
Yeah, 100%. I can't believe the real estate market right now, Mike. I know I'm actually looking to, maybe buy a house here over the next couple of years, something like that. And, obviously the real estate market has been very insane lately, kind of waiting for some nice pullbacks there, maybe get in on a little dip there, maybe dip by the housing market. Sounds a little funny there, but DHI will be a pretty good one to play. And I know that these rates are just insane, Mike. Like looking at the 2-year yield, I mean, at some point we got to see this baby drop back down.
You know it. All right. Well, Tom, I'm pretty excited going into this week. Even though today kind of sucked, it is good to see volatility and just movement overall. Nothing's worse than just a market that's not moving at all. So it's good to see movement. Do you have any final thoughts or any other things you want to outline?
Yeah, 100%, Mike. There's actually been some stocks today that were popping up that we didn't really mention too much yet, but I did mention them earlier. And these are the airlines. I can see United Airlines, Delta Airlines, even Boeing today had a very explosive move up. Now, it wasn't overly explosive. They were only up 1.22%. But on a day when the market's down this much, it's pretty nice to see these stocks moving. And these stocks are not overly correlated to the SPY. Like if we look at DAL, it's only 0.73. UAL is at 0.57. So not overly correlated. And whenever I look at some of this news that went on today, I actually saw that they ended up popping up whenever I saw Morgan Stanley upgraded them to overweight from equal weight. And they actually said that 2023 could be Goldilocks years for the airline. And I think that they were referring to Delta there. So watch Delta, watch Boeing, guys. These stocks are having some good momentum. And man, Boeing really actually held up pretty strong.
There we go. Also, I want to give a giant shout out to today's member of the day, Fear No Evil. You've been very active with YouTube comments over the past couple weeks. Definitely keep it up. We greatly appreciate it. Also, if you guys learned something from our video or just like the plays we share, definitely make sure to subscribe. We also cover those hedge fund style trades in every single video. So when you subscribe, you will see our videos recommended to you more often. Besides that, thank you guys so much for watching, and let's have an amazing week.